You know by now the story of Tim Hazelow, who was convicted of a felony because he refused to wear a mask while observing ballot counting in the 2024 election. Well, it now looks like the unthinkable has happened, and because of that conviction, Tim Hazelow is out of a job. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Okay, so I've been in touch with Tim, obviously, and we've been very behind the scenes sort of involved in just trying to, get his conviction thrown out or help him with an appeal. We were able to connect Tim and Tracy, who's the woman who's also facing a felony. Well, right now it's going to trial, so I think at the end of August she's set to go to trial. A little bit of background for those who aren't familiar. We've got the video for you. Tim Hazelow, he was chair of the Republican Party in Island County. He was also a volunteer ballot observer, and the Island County auditor put in a rule, and this again is 2024, long after the pandemic, that you had to wear a mask to observe the ballot counting, which Republicans said is ridiculous. And they thought it unfairly targeted them because they were going to be less likely to be willing to wear a mask compared to Democrat ballot observers. And so they thought that the auditor didn't have the right to make a rule like that. And so Tim walked in and decided to challenge it. And what happened? Well, the police came there and ordered him to leave. So at the time, he was just cited for disorderly conduct, which I think is insane because you watch the video and he's being just totally nice and polite and they walk him out and there's really no problem. I thought maybe trespass should have been the worst of it. But then a highly ideological leftist prosecutor decided to prosecute Tim Hazelow with a felony using some weird state statute that I get why it exists. It's for someone who unlawfully enters a ballot or an election center or a ballot counting facility. Like, yeah, we don't want somebody breaking in and stealing ballots and stuff. That should be a felony. That's not what Tim did. He signed in as a ballot observer, went in, sat there peacefully, and then when he was asked to leave, explained why he wasn't wearing a mask, and eventually he did leave and just walked out. So he gets charged with a felony by this Greg Banks guy, who's the elected prosecutor in Island County. And we've told you everything about Greg Banks. He's got all these social media posts about hating Republicans, wishing death on people who won't wear masks. And not only did he charge Tim Hazelow with a felony, he personally prosecuted the case, which he never does. He personally prosecuted the case in court. And good for him, was able to secure a conviction. And I'll get to more on him in a second, but it's insane. So Tim Hazelow is awaiting sentencing, right? Which looks like it's going to happen right now, scheduled for the 26th of this month. He faces up to 6 years in prison. Okay, I don't think he'll get that, but who knows, because I didn't think he'd be convicted in the first place. But beyond the sentence and beyond maybe going to jail for a little bit of time and having to pay some fees, he knew that if he was convicted, it would cost him his career. Because he works on a military base. He works in security. He has to have a clearance to be able to do his job. So as all of this was going on, he decides to do what he's required to do, and he self-reports and tells his employer, hey, this has happened and I've now been convicted, and just like that, now he doesn't have clearance to go to his place of employment. And his union is trying to help him out, but right now he's out of a job. Think about this. Because he didn't wear a mask in 2024, he's a convicted felon, and his career is ruined. And he's sitting here for the next month wondering how much time he's going to spend in prison. What do you say? And Greg Banks, I would ask you, is that what you wanted? You hate Republicans, you hate Trump supporters. You've said we need to rid the world of their diseased thinking. You've wished death on people who won't wear masks. So is this enough for you? Is this your pound of flesh? You take this dedicated, lifelong public servant, you put him in prison and you take his career away at the end of it while he's trying to save and make sure he has enough money for retirement. Are you happy now, Greg Banks? You've taken everything from him. I know the show's called Undivided. You're a disgusting human being. You are. And you can try to justify it. You've said you're protecting the sanctity of our elections, as if Tim Hazelow sitting there without a mask on in 2024 was disrupting anything. It wasn't. You are not a good person. You're not. You have prosecutorial discretion, especially you as the elected prosecutor. You didn't have to make this a felony. Besides, they weren't even charged with a felony to begin with. He was facing misdemeanor trespassing and disorderly conduct. And you sent him a letter and his attorney, and you said, if you don't plead guilty, I'm going to charge you with a felony. And he said, I'm not pleading guilty to this. So you decided to elevate it to a felony because he wouldn't give in. You didn't have to make it a felony. And look, I've even said, if it was Tim Hazelow stood up for what he believed in, if there was a consequence for him doing that was like trespassing, or hey, you can't come to the auditor's building anymore, so you're not able to be an election observer for future elections, I would have been like, well, it's kind of ridiculous, a mask mandate, but fine. That's all it should have been. That's all it should have been. It's absolutely insane. So, of course, Tim is not the only one. Tracy Abel is up next. Same exact thing happened to her. And she's just this like nice older woman. And she went in and she got escorted out and police told her she had to leave. And so now she's next up, and you can only imagine how freaked out she is because she sees what's happening to Tim. And she doesn't have the career element of it on the line. She's retired, but she volunteers at a local school. She's worried about that, and she's really worried about going to prison. It's just unreal. It's unreal. Greg Banks, like, you have no soul, no heart. So I rarely do this, and please, after I do this, don't send me your GoFundMe pages and ask me to put them out there because I won't. I rarely publish GoFundMe pages or anything like that, but I'm going to make an exception in this case. Tim and Tracy both have give, send, goes. And I will say, I know Tim's goal, he's trying to raise $100,000, and that's because he's lost his job. He's at $23,000 right now. And then Tracy, her goal is $10,000. She's almost there. She's at $9,260 right now, and she was trying to cover the cost of her retainer for her attorney. So I definitely, if you feel so compelled, I'd like to help them a little bit right now. Certainly we behind the scenes, I don't know the extent to which I've talked to you guys about this, but we have connected them with some generous benefactors who wanted to make sure that they had the best possible defense team. So Tim Hazelow has, free to him, some great criminal defense attorneys who are working on his behalf, trying to get an appeal figured out ahead of sentencing and all of that. And then Tracy, the same team working with her as she heads into trial. So absolutely outrageous. Greg Banks really should be ashamed of himself. I mean, and he sends these emails. We've had undivided viewers and listeners who've been sending him emails, and he'll respond with these lengthy email responses justifying what he did, as if he is the hero of the universe, as if the presidential election would never have been certified had he not taken this action. I mean, he really thinks that of himself. It is truly unbelievable. It just bothers me deep to my core.